with cleaning it up, you no longer will have to re-go back because you understand how it's supposed to look and how it should be structured. So without further ado, Miss Nicole, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Recording in progress.
All right, can you guys hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
All right. Well, thank
Yes.
you guys so much for having me tonight. I put together a slideshow because, I could talk for hours about this and, there's no quick fix to credit. So I'm going to be just breaking down, some of the common things that I see with a lot of my clients because I help a lot of people get their personal credit and also their business credit. And really the foundation is your personal credit. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
Perfect.
All right, awesome. So as we know, credit is going to be your foundation, and this really just guides you on the different ways that you can build a 720 and greater, because in this day and age, a 680 is no longer good enough for the banks. We really want to strive for greatness, and really where you're going to hit that sweet spot is about a 750, but honestly a 720 will do you as long as you are structured properly. And you could still have a 720 credit score and get declined, no doubt. That's why we're going to go over all of these important things. So it's important for me to just disclose I'm not a lawyer. I don't give legal advice. This is for informational purposes only, and this is true and accurate at the time of this recording as far as I know. Now what you're going to learn in this training is please don't impulsively apply for anything, because a lot of people are going to be rewatching this, and it's important for you to listen to all this information before you guys take action. Okay. And if you have questions, again, you can follow me on social media. I have a YouTube channel. And one of the questions that a lot of people ask me is why their credit score always looks different. Because a lot of people have different banking applications, Credit Karma, all of these different sites that they can look at their credit report. So I'm going to be breaking down what to look for, because one place might say, hey, you're a 720. The other place might say, no, you're a 670. So we want to make sure that we're looking at the right reports. We're actually looking at our FICO scores and not our Vantage scores. Now, there is a bonus to looking at your Vantage scores, because what we're really looking at are the data points. Because once you understand what the data points are for your credit report, everything else will fall in line. In this day and age, I don't even worry about what my credit score is. I already know it's good, and I know that I have a really strong credit profile. So honestly, once you get to that point, you're not even going to really worry what your credit score is, because you're going to understand that all that the banks are looking for are data points. And as long as you're meeting all of the data points, then you are going to be golden. So one thing that you do want to make sure is that you understand what your FICO scores are. You can get those from the My FICO app. That's what I recommend. It gives you every FICO score, because as you know, there's several different FICO variations out there. Most common is FICO 8 and FICO 9, but again, it just does vary based on the bank. You can also use My Score IQ. That's going to give you a FICO 8. And then Experian.com is very popular. It also is going to give you your FICO scores. So those are some options. Vantage, Credit Karma, CreditWise, a lot of the free apps that you get for getting your credit score, those are going to be either a Vantage 3.0 or a Vantage 4.0. Again, great for data points, great for data, just that's not what the banks are actually going to use when it comes to approving you. Now, places that would use a Vantage score, probably more like a property management company. I've seen a lot of property management companies use a Vantage score to approve people, so I'm not discrediting it. I'm just saying if you are actually going to a bank, then you are going to need to know what your actual FICO scores are. And again, you're going to need to know what FICO version that bank is pulling, okay? Because we're going to talk about building relationships with the banks before we even go after any sort of credit building products. Now, when you are looking at these apps, this is what you're going to be looking for, calculated using Advantage 3.0. So this is Credit Karma. A lot of you guys are familiar with Credit Karma. If not, it's a great free app for data purposes. But again, it's using a Vantage 3.0. You also want to pay attention to what credit bureaus this data is from. So as you know, with Credit Karma, you're going to see TransUnion. You're also going to see Equifax. Now, if you don't want to pay for credit monitoring, you could potentially just use Credit Karma, and then you get a free credit score with Experian.com, but it's only going to be for Experian. Now, here's a hack for Experian. You can actually call them and say, hey, can I get the 3 bureau report on a test, a trial basis? And they will sometimes give you 30 days for free, and then they'll give you a discounted price after that. But you do have to call in. So that's one way that you can get all of your 3 credit reports. And Experian is pretty darn accurate. And they're also really good for, disputing your personal information as well. So we're going to talk about some of the credit data points right now, how to structure your credit report for success, because as you guys know, there is nothing, simple about credit. There's never going to be like a black and white answer. There's so much gray area when it comes to credit. And that's why it's so important to just focus on the data points, okay? First data point, on-time payments. I cannot stress to you guys how important it is to make sure that all of the credit accounts that are reporting to your credit bureaus are being paid as agreed, which is on time. So if you have credit cards, car payments, anything that reports needs to be paid on time. I repair credit for people. I work with a lot of people on their credit, and you would be surprised the amount of people that I'm working with that mess around and get a late payment on their auto loan or something like that, and it drops their credit score 100 points. Like I just had this happen to someone, and it is the just disheartening thing to see. And honestly, on-time payments are the hardest thing to get corrected. Can they be corrected? Yes, but you just don't want to take the risk of it never being corrected. So always pay everything on time. It is the most important thing, and it is the biggest factor. If someone sees that you've been late on a credit bill, they're going to look at you like you are high risk. That is not something that we want. The next here is your credit card utilization. How much credit are you using versus how much credit is available to you? Now, this is just calculated using credit cards, revolving lines of credit. It does not include any sort of installment loan. That's a different ballgame. So we're just talking about your credit cards. So if you have a credit card that's $1,000, you really shouldn't be having more than, say, a 10% credit card utilization reporting to the credit bureaus. Why? Because I know everywhere we look, it says, oh, stay under 30%. But in this day and age, 30% is just too high and it's too risky. About 3 years ago, I thought, well, let me test this out for myself and let me see if I allow my credit utilization to go up to 30%, what's going to happen? And lo and behold, it dropped my credit score like 60 points. I kid you not. It was the most ridiculous thing. And that's what they tell everyone to keep their credit utilization at. Now, I just got a notification saying that my credit score is like 150 points above my average age and all that stuff, because I strive for greatness, and it wasn't always that way. I really had to work on my personal credit and understand how to get it there and how to keep it there, because it's easy to like achieve a 700 credit score, but it's challenging keeping it there. And that's why you really have to erase everything in your mind that you once thought about credit and relearn everything, because everyone out there is not always telling you the truth, and there's so much gray area. You really want to have a clear understanding what's going to be best for you. And these are the best practices in regards to keeping a higher credit score than the average person that's in your demographic. And that's just the bottom line. It's all about data points. So it's really important for you to pay those bills on time, and of course keep those credit utilizations low. Now this is going to be on the personal side, so that way we can leverage the business credit. Okay. Now If you have $1,000 credit card, you really want to keep it under $100. And later in the slideshow, we're going to go over the due date versus the statement date so you guys can learn how to hide your credit card utilization. The third data point that we're really going to be focusing on is negative accounts. Are there any sort of negative factor on your credit report that's holding you back? Whether that's a collection, a charge-off, a bankruptcy, or anything that's listed as some sort of derogatory account, because you could have accounts that are closed, zeroed out, have a zero balance, but are still being listed as derogatory. So we want to make sure that we're looking at all of these data points, really going through your credit report with a fine-tooth comb to see, do I have any accounts that are listed as derogatory in my credit report? Because that's really going to be holding you back, especially if they are actively reporting as derogatory. Okay. So we really want to get all of that cleaned up. And, sometimes it's just a matter of, doing a little credit repair yourself or finding someone that can help you. Either way, just getting it done. And if you're like, look, I know this is mine, I just want to get past this stuff, then just settle the debt, just settle it and get it past you. And there's a way to go about that as well. So if you need help, reach out, because I'm definitely an expert when it comes to that. Not only have I done this for myself, because I was in the credit dumps at one point, but I've helped a ton of people get through and navigate this whole thing. The next is credit history. So this is really important, because one thing that banks look at is your history as a consumer. Are you credible? Anyone can pay their bills for a year straight, but can you pay your bills for 2 years straight, 3 years straight, 4 years straight? If you could pay on time for 4 years, that speaks volume about you. You are no longer a risk in the bank's eyes if you have not had a late payment in the last 4 years. You are a very credible candidate. And what that means for you is you have more opportunity. You can shop around. You can look for the best rates. What can the banks do for you at this point? Because now you have the upper hand. Because a lot of banks do look at the last 2 years. And with FICO 10 coming out, that's going to allow them to look at the last 4 years. So it's very important that you start now, because FICO 10 is out. It's just none of the banks are using it. So, but it will get there, eventually, because, look at, we're already at banks using FICO 8 and FICO 9. So FICO 10 is definitely up next. The next thing here is, if you wanted to add history, you can add an authorized user account. I actually just had a client today that bought 2 15-year authorized user accounts. He's getting ready to buy a third, so we can add a ton of history to his credit report, and in return, that's going to make your credit score go up, because the goal is to have your history at about 5 years. You really, you're good at about 3, but the goal is to get to about 5, and how you do that is adding history to your credit report by using authorized user accounts, or you can also add your rental history. So if you've been paying rent for the past 2 years, or you have someone that can say you paid rent for the last 2 years, you can add rental history backdated 24 months to your credit report, which is a primary trade line for you. And later on in the slideshow, I'll give you some places that you can go and get your rent reported to your credit. The next is your credit mixture. And this is really important too, because a lot of people that I've seen, that I've worked with, they'll get a ton of credit builder accounts, Self, Credit Strong, all of these different, trade lines that are just not that great. They're not grade A trade lines. It's really just a bunch of trash trade lines. So that's why you really want to be smart about how you're adding these trade lines to your credit report. You want to be adding grade A bank rated real bank trade lines, credit unions, regional banks, national banks. You want to be adding good trade lines. Yes, it's going to take a little bit longer, but it's worth it, because you don't want to have a bunch of trash trade lines on your credit report. It just doesn't look good in the bank's eyes. But when they see a bunch of trade lines from Bank of America, Navy Federal, PenFed, that's a lot better to them, because that's their competitor, so they want to give you credit. Of course, the bank makes money when they give money. So credit mixture, you want to have anywhere between 10 and 20 accounts on your credit report. 2 to 5 installment loans. That's going to be your auto loan, could be a rent type of rent agreement that's reporting every month. Student loans, those have now resumed. So make sure that if you have not contacted your student loan service provider, you do, because some people can actually apply for forgiveness right now. So you just need to ask them, hey, can I apply for forgiveness? If not, can I get up on the ramp up program? So that way I can get on a really low payment plan for the next year and ramp up to getting my student loans, situated, because you just have to stay in good standing to apply for forgiveness. And right now is a great time to be able to do all of those things. But student loans, those are great installment loans. And then you want revolving lines of credit, which are going to be your credit cards and then your lines of credit. So if you have a credit line, that's going to be revolving. And you really want to be careful when you get a bunch of credit cards, because you don't want to keep balances on all of them, especially if you are going after funding. So I'll share a story with you guys about PenFed. And, PenFed is a great bank, and they're one of the banks that we're going to go over today, but they are very sensitive when it comes to inquiries, and they are very sensitive when it comes to balances on your credit cards. So if you want to maximize your funding with PenFed, you want to make sure that you have a zero balance on pretty much all of your credit cards. If for some reason you do have a balance on some of your credit cards, only have a balance on one credit card, because I had a client that applied for funding, couple clients. One guy, no problem. He has like two $20,000 credit cards, one $15,000 credit card. He's good. Other client, they went and applied and they had like an $8 balance. Like all of their balances on their credit cards were less than $100. So it wasn't a large amount of money by any means, but since he had balances on all of those credit cards, he looked too risky in the eyes of PenFed. So when we called together, I was on the phone when we called the reconsideration line, that's exactly what they told him. And this was years ago, but that always stuck with me, because it's so important for you guys to know this information so we can be ahead of the game and not be wasting our time with banks that aren't going to approve us. If your situation is, hey, I've got balances on a bunch of things, then don't apply for PenFed right now. It's just not for you. Start a bank account with them, start building your relationship with them, do some sort of pledge loan, which is a secured loan with them, and just wait a little bit until you can pay off your credit cards. And then once all of that data is updated on your credit reports, PenFed's going to pull you from Equifax. So that's just, a little tip for you guys. But number 6 is new accounts. So you really have to be a little disciplined when it comes to applying for credit. You don't want to get too much too quickly. And that's why we're going to go over one of the concepts that I use with my clients is we're going to build, we're going to take a break, and then we're going to start building again. So your hard inquiries, these are all of your new accounts that you've acquired in the last, or have applied for in the last 2 years. As we know, inquiries are going to remain on your credit report for up to 25 months. Yes, 2 years, but it takes about a month to fall off organically unless you dispute it. So if you have any inquiries on your credit report that are not associated with a credit account, dispute those, get those deleted. The ones that are associated, you can see this is actually my credit data from my Credit Karma. So I have a lot of inquiries with TransUnion over the last 2 years because I leveraged my credit a lot. I have a lot of stuff with Navy Federal, Apple, there's so many different accounts that I've gotten over the last 2 years. Now, in the last 12 months, I only have 2. So that's okay. You just have to understand that some banks aren't going to like 7 inquiries. And I know that, so I just don't go to those banks. But all of those inquiries are going to fall off in the next 3 to 4 months. So that's why you just want to kind of be able to plan accordingly and understand it. Because you don't really want to dispute inquiries that are tied to your open accounts, say with like Navy Federal or Apple or any of the banks that you actually have credit cards with, because they could potentially close your account. And that has happened to some of my clients. We've disputed the inquiries because they said, no, just dispute it. And guess what? They closed one of the credit cards and she was highly upset. But that was something that I told her, this is a risk that we take. So I'm not willing to take that risk. I wouldn't recommend you guys take that risk unless the account has not reported to your credit report yet. So you have that window of opportunity when you first apply for something to get that inquiry off. Fastest way is just to call the credit bureaus and have them take that off. So I hope you guys are with me so far. All right, so let's talk about some ideal data points. And again, we're working up to this. We're not going to try to do anything super fast with credit because credit is a slow thing. It's been around for over 100 years, and it's not something that you want to rush. This is something that you really want to take your time with. Make sure you do it right, because that's what I did. I wasn't educated about credit, and I rushed it, and I got a bunch of trash trade lines, and then I had to overcome that. And once you open up, secured credit cards or different credit accounts, you don't want to close them. So now I'm kind of like stuck with all these bad secured credit cards that I have to pay an annual fee for every year that I absolutely hate and don't even know where the card is at. Like, First Progress and Sky and all those horrible, credit cards that I just... Now I'm like stuck with them, and that's why you want to build with the right secured cards. And we're going to go over that later on in this slideshow. So we want to get 4 to 8 personal credit cards issued by tier 1 banks. And that's going to be, top grade A banks. We really want to try to get higher limits between 10 to 20K. And if you don't have high limits, you're going to have to work your way up to that. Spend, pay on your credit cards to show them that you're spending, but you're paying, okay? And if that means weekly, like you put all your bills on the card and then you pay it weekly or pay it bi-weekly, make sure you do that. Just make sure you don't allow a balance to report. So that means that you have paid the balance before the closing date of that card, which is the last day of your billing cycle. And we'll go over that a little bit later on too. But ask for credit line increases. Okay. If you have Navy Federal, they give credit line increases every 6 months, and you can get $8,000 every 6 months with Navy Federal, and there's no hard inquiry. You just request the credit line increase right through the app. So that's with a lot of these banks as well. You can ask for credit line increases right there through the app, and it won't affect you and it won't give you a hard pull, which is really awesome. And then as far as the installment loans, 2 to 4 installment loans. And again, these are going to be your student loans, personal loans, rental, mortgage, any sort of installment where you pay the same amount every single month until that balance is paid in full. Now, if you have furniture, make sure that when you get furniture, it is not a revolving line of credit. You want a loan, because a loan is not going to affect your utilization. Because a lot of times when people go and get furniture, they're approved for like $3,800 or $5,800 or maybe $10,000. If that is on a credit card, be very careful. Do not spend a lot, because that's going to affect your credit card utilization, and it's going to bring your credit score down soon as that balance reports on that card. But if you get furniture, you can do it through a loan process. Make sure it's an installment account, not a revolving account, and that way it won't affect your credit score. You'll be perfectly fine. Now, average, again, you want to keep that 2-year, but every time you apply for credit, it's going to bring your history down more and more and more. So that's why when people are first starting to structure their credit report, a lot of times their history is only 6 months, 12 months. That's where you want to add an authorized user trade line to help bring up that history, which is going to help bring up your credit score. Now keep your inquiries low. Again, if you can get them deleted, but don't just blind apply for things. Pre-qualify if you can. If you are pre-qualified, then you can make a credit card stacking plan. And I have a couple videos on my YouTube channel, so make sure that you guys watch those, because it's great information on how to properly credit card stack. You want to keep your credit utilization, especially when you're applying for funding, between 1 and 4%. So under 5% for your credit card utilization. And again, the goal is to really not have balances on too many credit cards. So if you do have a balance on like 1 or 2 cards, okay. But if you have, 7 or 8 credit cards, you really, don't want to have a balance on more than a few at a time. So just keep that in mind. Sometimes it's hard to do so, especially around the holidays, but it's just not worth it. That's why we want to get business credit cards and keep our balances on our business credit cards that don't report to our personal credit. You really want to structure your personal credit properly so that way you can personally guarantee for any business that you want. If you have 10 LLCs, you can PG for 10 LLCs. So again, you don't want to have any negatives, no late payments, no collections, especially if you're going after business funding, because late payments are a huge sign of risk to a lot of banks. And that's really the number one way I see people getting declined when it comes to business credit is they have late payments on their personal credit report. So it's extremely important for you guys to only take on what you can handle. And sometimes I've worked with so many people where they just take on too much too quickly and they're not able to manage it and they crash and burn. And I don't want to see that happen to anybody else. So that's why I always tell people, build, break, build. Okay, we're going to build up some credit. We're going to get some good cards. Not too many, maybe about 3 or so, right? And we'll go into the concept of all of that. And then we're going to take a break and we're just going to focus on paying on time, making sure that those trade lines get seasoned. And again, for those of you that are not familiar with the term trade line, there are 2 different types of trade lines. There's primary trade lines, and these are all credit accounts that are on your credit report. Okay, so there's primary, those that are in your name. Your auto loans are your primary trade lines. Your student loans are your primary trade lines. And then your credit cards, primary trade lines. But say, for example, you have a mom. She adds you as an authorized user to her credit card. That is going to now report to your credit report. Say she's got 15 years of history. She's got a $15,000 credit card. She can add you as an authorized user, not give you, the credit card, but you would then inherit that entire account history and the account limits to your credit report, which a lot of times helps people's credit score goes up. It helps people get approved for higher funding amounts. That's exactly how I was able to also grow into high limits, was adding, higher limit trade lines. But there is a time and a place for that. You want to make sure that you have, enough established primary accounts. You don't have any negatives. We can't put trade lines on someone's credit report that just has a bunch of negative stuff. We have to take care of that first. So when we are in the building phase, we can get anywhere from 2 to 4 pledge loans. And for those of you that don't know what that is, basically a pledge loan is a secured loan that you can get from, a credit union, or other banks out there offer them. Navy Federal has a pledge loan. PenFed has a secured loan. And it's a bank trade line. So these are grade A trade lines that you can add to your credit report. And say you have like $1,000 in your savings account. Do a pledge loan. When you get your taxes back this season, do pledge loans with them to put that money on your credit report. If you do it with Navy Federal, it'll still be accessible to you. The way that it works, you put it in your savings account. They take it from your savings account, put it into your checking account, but also take a loan out against it. There's no hard credit check. So now you're getting an installment loan, which is a primary trade line from a grade A bank, on your credit report, and that's helping you build your relationship directly with the bank. So that way, when you go to them in say 6 months or so, and you apply for a credit card, you're going to have a much better chance of getting a higher limit credit card. That's exactly how I got my $25,000 credit card from Navy Federal. Was I did a pledge loan with them first, and then I applied for the credit card. And that's a much better strategy versus just going right in. I mean, if you have already good credit, then that's one thing, but say you don't have the best credit score, it's not even a 700, or if it is a 700, it's very thin. Build a relationship up with the bank by doing these secured loans. I have a ton of videos on my YouTube channel that goes deeper into those pledge loans and how they work and some of the banks that you can go to. And it doesn't affect the 624 rule. So as many of you may know, Chase, they have the 524 rule where if you've opened up more than 5 accounts in the last 24 months, they're going to decline you. So that's the reason why if Chase is on your bucket list of places you're like, hey, I got to have this Chase card, which they have some amazing credit cards, let Chase be one of the first places that you apply with, because if you go into Chase with too many inquiries, more than like 3 inquiries, they might deny you. If you've opened up too many accounts in the last 24 months, they might deny you. On the business side, you can probably bypass that by using a business banker, but I just don't recommend it. So be careful if your goal is to get in with Chase. 2 to 4 credit cards. So these can be secured credit cards if you need to. Again, you can pre-qualify for a lot of these cards directly on the website. We're going to be going over some of the secured cards that I would recommend to you guys as well. I don't like a lot of these secured cards, but I do like the ones that graduate, like Discover and, Navy, and pretty much any sort of credit union secured credit card is the way to go. You're also going to be dating your bank accounts. So you're going to be opening up multiple bank accounts, probably about 3 or so, and setting up your direct deposit, maybe putting 20% in one or 10% in another. Like, do a percentage to all of these different banks, because you don't have to have 100% of your direct deposit go to one bank. You want to be dating your banks, showing them that you have consistent deposits coming in, even if it's $50 a month. It doesn't matter. That's not the point. When I got all the funding from Navy, I didn't have anything in my bank accounts. I'm just going to be honest. So I later on set up direct deposit and all that stuff so I could pay all my stuff with them. But when I initially got approved, I did not have direct deposit with them. But if you are building up your relationships with your banks, I would definitely recommend it, especially if you have direct deposit. And then if you wanted to add an authorized user account, you certainly can. If you don't have any family members that would have a credit card that would qualify, and we're going to go over what a qualifying AU is later on in the slide. This is going to be a long one, guys, so make sure you have your pen and papers, because I put a lot of time into putting all this stuff together for you guys, because there's so much that I could review, but I'm like, I gotta push this all into like 2 hours. So we're going to make it happen. So if you need to buy an authorized user account, I have a ton of authorized user accounts that will report for a 3-month period. So you can just DM me on Instagram and I will send you my list. So after you're done building and you've got your credit score up, sometimes when new accounts report, they might bring your credit score down a little bit. Don't be alarmed. The more that you pay them and just pay on time over like a 3-month period, 6-month period, you're going to see your credit score go right back up. You can also add another authorized user account once everything has reported if you need to give yourself a little bit of a boost. But we're going to be taking a break for about a 6 to a 12-month period. Some people are in a rush, and that's fine. 6 to 12 months, you need to take a break, okay? I do 6 to 12 because I'm not in a rush, right? And it's best to do it when you're not in a rush, because banks can tell the people that need money versus the people that don't really need money, right? And that's why we want to build our personal credit report extremely well, so that way we can get funding for all of these different corporations and businesses, and, look like, hey, this person is totally credible. Like, we want to give them all of the money. That's what we want the banks to think when they look at our credit report. Be patient, okay? Credit is something that takes a lot of patience, and it can be very frustrating, and a lot of people want to give up. I've worked with thousands of people, and I know, about 50% of them want to give up. It's so easy to do. At one point, I wanted to give up too. I was one of those people, but I got my butt back in the saddle, and I said, nope, I'm not going to do it. These credit bureaus are about the most frustrating people to work with in the world, but they are a for-profit corporation, and that's what you have to understand. Their job is to make things hard for us. So you will give up, and you'll just deal with it, and you'll pay more, and you'll have, a crappy lifestyle. So we cannot allow them to win. We just have to be patient. We have to move strategically. When you are taking your break and you've done, say you've paid on everything on time, again, set everything up on auto pay, okay, for the minimum amount due. So that way you don't ever take the risk of getting a late payment, guys. If you change banks, verify everything went through. We cannot afford to ever get a late payment. Extremely important. Okay. So now we've taken a break. We're going to start building again, okay? Because we've let our current trade lines and, primary accounts age a little bit. We've got some history under our belts. Now we are going to start, pre-qualifying for some of the cards that are on our bucket list. And that's why I always love cards that will pre-qualify you, because you can go right to the app or right to the website and pre-qualify to see if you have the, option to, if they're going to say yes or no. Sometimes they're just going to flat out say no. Okay, great. We know that's not the card for us right now. But oftentimes when we pre-qualify, it's like, yes, that's not a guarantee, but it's a good sign. When you are applying, make sure that you don't have any fraud alerts on your credit report. All of your personal information is updated, because the information that you put on your application and the information that's on your credit report is going to be compared. And sometimes if that information isn't adding up, you can get declined. A lot of people have seen this lately with Equifax, especially. They'll just completely wipe out your credit report and it's like you don't even exist. This often happens when someone has recently moved. They've disputed something. They can't verify who you are. Basically, what you have to do is write them a letter and let them know to unlock your credit report. You are not able to access it, and send them your ID, your social security card, and 2 forms of proof of address. So that can be, insurance statement, a utility bill, a bank statement, registration, a pay stub, tax forms, anything that can prove that this is your name and this is your address. I always say 2. 1 is required, but I like to go just make sure it gets done. So we send 2 just in case 1 is not suitable for them, because they are very picky. So make sure you guys do that, because that's just happened to like 3 of my clients like this week. So it's been happening a lot and everyone freaks out, but it's no big deal. It happened to me too. So that's why I know how to do it. So after we're in the second phase of building, we want to get, some more credit accounts with grade A banks. Those are going to be the banks that we've been building our banking relationship with. So if we've opened up 3 credit unions, now it's time to go and apply for some credit products directly with those banks that we've been building a relationship with. If you can get into Navy Federal, I highly recommend it, because Navy Federal is a really great bank. They're the #1 credit union. I also like USAA. There's PenFed. We're going to be going over a lot of banks, DCU. There's so many other banks out there. So, but like I said, if you can get into Navy, great. They're going to pull check systems when you apply. So a lot of people, I'm sorry, not check systems. They're not going to pull check systems. They're going to pull early warning. So if you have issues in check systems, Navy Federal is a great bank, because they are not going to pull from check systems. And sometimes the info that's on check systems isn't in early warning. So I've had a lot of people that once used Chime that were able to get in with Navy Federal, and they were a lot happier as far as, the credit products and opportunities that come along versus what Chime has to offer. So build, break, build. You guys kind of get the drift of this. And again, if you guys want to request a copy of this slideshow, just send me a message on Instagram and I will send it to you guys, because some of this is like a lot of information. I'm not going to go over it word for word, but you guys get the drift, because my whole thing is, if you knew better, you would do better. And that's why, like, someone asked me the other day, they're like, can I have more than 1 bank account? And I was like, absolutely. Like, we should be having, multiple bank accounts and building multiple relationships. And sometimes it gets overwhelming. Like, I have so many bank accounts, I had to make a spreadsheet. And sometimes, that's what it takes, because we have to stay organized. So, but they're all credit unions, and I have a lot of direct deposit going to them because it's sprinkled out. So that's why when you understand the concept behind everything, you can really start, building the relationships and getting credit with these grade A banks. And a lot of these banks are in competition with each other. So when Navy Federal gives you $25,000 credit card, they just raise the bar for all of these other banks to compete with them. So now PenFed's giving you 20K, and Andrews Federal and DCU and all of these other places are giving you higher limits because guess what? Navy Federal, they helped raise the bar for you. And a lot of people come to me and they're like, I can only get approved for $500. It's like, that is the worst place to be at, are those baby limit approvals. And, Navy Federal, they're just going to be the ones to help open up the gates for you. And because they're known for giving higher limits. And it's very easy for someone with a 670 credit score to get a $25,000 credit card. I had a guy that had like a 640 and he got a $25,000 credit card. Now, mind you, he had been banking with them for years, but he never really thought he could get approved, but he did. So, that just goes to show, if you knew better, you can definitely do better. And always stick by the concept, build, break, build. And that really helped me out a lot because I was not taking a break. I was just applying. And it was really hurting my credit to where finally everyone was denying me because I just had too much new credit. So when you take a break for a good year and then you go and get more funding, it's like it just makes it a lot easier to get approved with a lot of these banks because you don't look like you need the credit. It looks like, hey, they have all of these great trade lines. They've been managing them great. We've got at least 12 months of payment history. That's what banks like to see. And that's what they like to, feel comfortable with, to know that you're not a risk. So I want you guys to drop a gem in the chat. Let me know if you guys are still with me here. I know credit is not always the most fun thing to learn about, guys, but I'm telling you, it is life-changing. It is totally, totally life-changing. Like when I first started learning about credit, I didn't have nothing. Nothing. I was living in a 1-bedroom apartment. I didn't even have a car. I think my car had just got repossessed, and it was something else. So credit has helped me change my life. I had a newborn baby when I first started doing this credit stuff, and she's 4 years old now. So I've been doing it, I took about a year to learn it, but I really got into it when she was born because that gave me a swift kick in the rear end saying, hey, I got to get my stuff together. Now I got, a person, a family. So, man, it's go time. And I'll tell you, that was the motivation that I needed, guys. And I'm telling you, now I can help her set up her life with credit, and it's truly life changing because when you are young, you have the whole world ahead of you. I started a lot later in life because I wasn't educated, okay? And that's why you guys have the upper hand, because in this day and age, there's so much we can learn online. We don't even have to leave our home to learn this information. We don't have to spend thousands and thousands of dollars going to college to learn life-changing information. I didn't go to college. I don't have a master's degree. I don't have a bachelor's degree. But guess what? I make more money than people that do, and I don't have a ton of student loan debt. I went to college, but that was 20 years ago, So it's like this information these days is life-changing. So thank you guys for tuning in. We've got a big slideshow, so I hope you guys are ready. We're going to talk about some credit repair gems because you really want to be building credit while you repair your credit, if that makes sense. So a lot of credit on Instagram, Credit Coach Nicole Scott. I'm also on YouTube at Credit Coach Nicole Scott. And you can email me, Nicole at creditcoachpros.com. But a lot of people out there that are from credit repair companies, they're going to tell you, oh, don't do nothing. Don't apply for nothing. Let us fix your credit first and then do that. No. You want to be building credit while you're repairing credit because guess what? Pledge loans don't require a credit score. They don't require a credit pull to get while you're repairing your credit. So when you do a pledge loan, they're not going to pull your credit. So it doesn't matter what your credit score is, but this allows you the opportunity to get a primary trade line, to pay monthly on it, and to build up that payment history. So it's really important for you guys to rebuild your credit while you are fixing your credit or while you're working on your credit. And if you guys are working with a credit repair company, you really want to be involved in the process to understand what's going on, what the plan of action is going to be. Because if they're telling you, no, don't apply for anything, don't get any credit builders, that's a red flag. So just be mindful. You really have to be a part of the process because there's only so much that they can do for you. And that's the mistake that I made, was I relied on a credit repair company for months, 8 months. And I'm like, okay, what's going on? I'm going to go apply for a home. Oh, no. So I just wasted a lot of time. You really have to have a good understanding of what's on your report. And it wasn't until that time that I, really started seeing a difference with my credit when I was going through this, probably about 5-6 years ago. So when you are going through the credit rebuilding process, we went over this a little bit earlier, but you want to really make sure that you are dating your bank account so you can apply for credit when the time is right. Sometimes I would prefer people to do a pledge loan over a secured credit card because once they pull your credit, they're going to know what your credit score is, okay? It's going to be on file. If you get a credit product that doesn't require a credit pull, they're not going to know what your credit score is. So if your credit score changes in the next 90 days, they won't know anything about it. So when you do apply for something that requires a hard pull, it's going to look a lot better for you guys. And you can add rental primaries. Boom Pay is my favorite. There's also Rent Reporters, and I have a list of them in this slideshow as well. So we talked about the break. I'm not going to go too much more into that. Don't focus on the credit score. Again, focus on your data points. Look at your credit report. The score, don't get caught up on the score. I have so many people that text me like, oh my God, my credit score went down 20 points. Oh my God, my credit score went up 30 points. Don't worry about all of that. Just worry about the data points. You have to focus on the data that's on your credit report, because I've even seen people that have a 680 credit score that their credit report is strong and they get approved with Chase. They get approved with American Express because they have a strong profile. It's just their score is in the dumps right now because maybe they just, ran up a credit card, but they paid it off, but their credit score is still kind of low and they don't know how to add an authorized user account to get their credit score higher. Those things are totally, normal, especially for business owners, because a lot of times they're putting expenses on personal credit cards. So you really want to just, have that clarity that you, and again, don't apply for things too soon. You don't want to pull the triggers too soon either. I have so many people that do that and they're like, oh, well, I paid off my credit card, I'm going to apply for it. It's like, wait a minute. That has not updated on your credit report yet. So if you haven't seen it reflect on your end, on your actual credit report, don't apply for anything yet. Because sometimes when you pay off your credit cards with, say, Capital One, it can take 30 days to actually reflect on your credit reports that are an actual FICO version. So that's why it's so important to understand the data on what's on your credit report. Now, I recommend My Score IQ because when you're first going through your credit report, it's very easy to look at a 3-bureau report. And what a 3-bureau report is each credit report side by side. Experian is great, but they're 3 different tabs, so they're not side by side, so you can compare the data. That's why I like My Score IQ, which is the same makers of Identity IQ, which a lot of you guys, I'm sure, are familiar with. If you've ever gotten credit repair in the past, I'm sure they had you sign up for Identity IQ. Same folks make My Score IQ, except for My Score IQ is a FICO 8 versus my Identity IQ, which is a Vantage 3.0. You can use either when you're going through the repair process because it's still going to have the same data. It's just, again, the scores are going to be different because they're being calculated by different versions. And if you want to know what the banks are using, you got to go with the FICO. First thing that you want to do is get that personal info cleaned up, guys. I cannot tell you the amount of people that I've worked with that applied for the Apple card and their information in their Apple ID was wrong. Their information on their credit report was wrong. And then their information that they put on their application was correct. But guess what? Since all of that didn't match, it was declined because they couldn't verify them. So it's extremely important that the information that you put on your credit application matches the same exact information that is on your credit report. And I'm going to tell you why. So anytime you apply for credit, say I go online right now and I apply for a new credit card with DCU. That information that I put on that credit application is going to reflect on my credit report. So that's why it's extremely important that when you are applying, you use the same name variation, the same address variation. So if you use maybe apartment number, you want to put APT or just number or suite, but you want to be consistent and put that same variation down. Put it in your phone. If you're going to put a period, put a period on every application. So that's the reason why a lot of people get all this other information on their credit report is because when they fill out applications, it's different information or it's a different variation of your name. Maybe you used a middle initial or maybe you used a nickname. Make sure to use the same first name. If you're going to be using a middle name, great. I don't recommend it because it's not required. It's optional. Okay, so never use the middle initial. Just use first name, last name, address, all that good stuff. Clean up any old addresses. Fastest way to do it is to call the credit bureaus. You can actually sign up for an account with each credit bureau, Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion, and you can apply and delete those online with those. But I wouldn't necessarily dispute anything else online. I would just use those accounts for personal info because it's the fastest way that we can get disassociated with those old addresses. And again, we're sticking to one name, one address, one employer. And every time you do the application, make sure if you are self-employed, you put your business name. You never, ever, ever, ever want to put self-employed or 1099 or something. You always want to place the business name, whatever the business name is, and then your title. The title should always be something in management, okay? Operations manager, director of operations, manager, whatever the case is. The best title that I have come to love is operations manager or operations director because it is a high salary amount and it's not like they're verifying your title. So it's very important just to understand these little details when it comes to credit because I've seen people that use like virtual business locations in more rich areas and they get more funding based on their location. So it does matter. A lot of that does matter. So one thing that I really want to, reiterate to you guys, it's really important if you have had credit repair in the past that you look at your credit reports to make sure that you do not have a fraud alert on your credit report. And what a fraud alert is basically it's a consumer statement. So when you look at your credit reports, there's an area that says consumer statement. If you see like victim of fraud, something, generally that's because you had credit repair. We did not request any of this information to be on your reports, but the credit bureaus automatically put them on there without your consent. And it's not necessary. You don't need it. If you're that concerned about, being a victim of fraud, you can keep your reports locked until you're ready to apply for something. But when you do have fraud alerts on your credit, they will have to hang up or they will just automatically deny you because they're not able to verify you. And on that fraud alert, it says that they have to call you and verify before they open up any new credit accounts. Or if you've been if it says victim of identity theft, they're definitely not going to approve an account unless they verify it with you first. And sometimes it'll, just lead into a denial. So that's why it's so important to get those fraud alerts removed. If you sign up for the MyFICO app, MyFICO will tell you right away if you have fraud alerts on your credit report. So you got to get those removed. You can write a letter to the credit bureaus and ask them to remove them. You can call them as well to ask them to remove any consumer statement off your credit report. Now, oftentimes, since it does have to do with identity theft, they will make you send in a written statement as well and just say, hey, remove any consumer statement, remove all fraud alerts from my credit report. Thank you. It can be that easy. Supply photo ID, social security card, and 2 forms of proof of address. Make sure those get deleted before you apply to get an authorized user account, because that could prevent your authorized user account, and also before you apply for anything, because that could lead to automatic denial. Because a lot of times it's just a computer system, which, hey, I'm all for. But that computer system's going to see, oh, they have a fraud alert. That's going to stop them. So it's going to need a manual review. We don't want that, okay? We also want to clear up any negative accounts on our credit report. I touched on this earlier, but again, anything that is got the word derogatory, collection, charge off, if you have late payments, if you have excessive inquiries, those are all affecting you in a negative manner. So a lot of times if you have an old account that has late payments on it, honestly, it's best to probably just get that entire account removed from your credit report. If you have any sort of account that says it was transferred to another company, try to get that off the credit report, because a lot of times with funding companies, if you have an account that says transferred, they're going to want to know where it was transferred to, where it is now, who has it. It can become a mess. So even if it's a zero balance, try to get those off as well. You want to use AI to create your dispute letters. ChatGPT is the perfect solution for you guys to just literally use ChatGPT to do your dispute letters. You can put them into a Google Doc, but it's very easy to use. And I actually have an FCRA ebook. And if you email me or you send me a DM, I'll send it to you, because I just sent it out on my email list recently. You can literally just copy and paste little verbs of the FCRA law into ChatGPT and say, hey, ChatGPT, write me a letter based on this consumer violation. And it'll write a great letter for you guys. So it's been a great tool that I've used for my business. But you want to keep originals for your records. Never send original copies to the credit bureaus. They lose things get lost in the mail. You always want to keep a copy for yourself. You want to make sure that you are not sending originals, okay? Especially if it's from like a creditor or a letter from the bank saying, otherwise, that you have to send as proof to the credit bureaus, because oftentimes the credit bureaus won't delete something unless you have proof from the creditor. So that's why I tell people, always send any sort of proof as a copy. Make sure you have a copy. If you are not computer savvy, handwrite a letter. Handwrite notes on the letters. Make it feel like it's from an actual person, because the amount of letters that I have seen being rejected by the credit bureaus has been absolutely crazy lately. I don't deal with it much because all of our letters are custom, but I work with a lot of people who use Credit Repair Cloud, and they're like, oh my God, all I get is stall tactics. Well, that's because you're using mail service to send your letters, which looks like it's from a credit repair company, and you're using these generic letters from, a software company. I do like software, but make sure you're using a custom letter. ChatGPT is free. There's no excuse, and you can put your custom letter inside of your software. Again, you want to make sure when you send your letters to the credit bureaus, you include your photo ID, which can be state driver's license, ID, or passport. your social security card, and 2 forms of proof of address. That can be utility bill, statement. I went over the things earlier, but I send 2 because I always want to make sure they're not going to reject it. Okay. It makes it feel like it's really from you, especially when you're sending it via mail. You can send it certified, but it's not necessary. I use stamp mail for all my clients and it's fine. Do not send your proof documents to the creditor or collection companies. I always recommend sending a dispute letter to the collection companies or to the creditor that is reporting on the credit reports, but we do not want to send them our ID. We don't want to send them our social security card. We don't want to send them anything at this point, okay? We want them to validate who we are. If you plan to sue the credit bureaus because they're not listening to you, you're having to take legal action, from this point forward, you want to make sure that you send all of your mail certified mail return receipt because you want to track the entire process. If you're not sure, you're like, hey, I might sue them, I might not, you're going to want to send certified mail return receipt. If you're like, hey, I don't ever plan to sue them, then just use a regular stamped mail and you can send up to 8 pages in each envelope. So it's quite a bit. Be organized. I used to have a credit binder. It was like this thick. It was so huge. But it worked because it kept me organized. And this was before I actually used software because I didn't want to have to pay for software just for myself. So I got a binder and I made sure to keep copies in there of everything. I did do everything certified mail. I used truth affidavits. I got those notarized. I sent copies of the affidavits. So, you really sometimes have to be aggressive. Now, you can also use Google, scan and upload everything to like a Google folder, Google software. You can also use software. A lot of people that I work with use Credit Repair Cloud. There's Dispute Fox, there's Dispute Bee. I like Credit Repair Cloud or Dispute Fox. Those are my 2 favorite. If you're first starting out, you can get 30 days for free with Credit Repair Cloud, so it might be something that you can check out. Dispute Fox, same thing. I think you can get 14 days with them. I like both of them. Now, if you want to get Credit Repair Cloud, I have a ton of free training on my YouTube channel, so you can just check that out. And don't take any more L's because I'm telling you guys, sometimes we have to take a little bit of time to learn what we need to do to better ourselves before we earn. But I'm telling you, if you take the time to learn, the bag is going to be that much bigger and the reward is going to be that much greater. It's when we're trying to rush the process that things are never going to work out, because if you knew better, you would do better. And that's what that's what we're all here for, is to do better so we can learn and get this money. But a lot of us, we don't really have a good understanding of credit. I know for me, I never got educated about credit. I just knew to pay, my bills. And thank God for me, everything was on auto pay and I never had any late payments. But a lot of us really didn't grow up with any sort of credit education. This is not taught to us. A lot of people come to me, they're embarrassed. I'm like, there's no reason for you guys to be embarrassed because this was never taught to us. And the information that is out there, a lot of it is it's that gray area. It could be misleading. When they tell you to keep your credit card utilization at 30%, I feel like that's a setup, But we just have to kind of relearn everything about credit that we once thought that we knew, because when it comes to credit, yes, we have to pay it back. So we have to be very disciplined with our spending habits. But when you are an entrepreneur, you have to understand the value of credit. Structuring your personal credit so that way we can get unlimited credit for all of these corporations and LLCs with EINs. Like, that's where the real money is at. But again, the foundation is your personal credit until your business is strong enough to stand on its own 2 feet. Once your business is strong, you can do away with the PG. But when your business is first starting out, sometimes within that first 2 to 5 years, a lot of times you are going to need a PG for your business. Now, it's not surprising to me that a lot of people have bad relationships with credit because, again, we weren't taught about credit. It's not in the schools. And a lot of it, even to this day, is such a mystery. They don't want to tell us, everything that we really should know about credit. And that's why I always tell people, spend your time wisely. Listen to this information, replay it, play the replays when you're driving, because that's really how I learned. When I was first learning about credit, I had a long commute. And instead of listening to music, I would listen to credit information and I would teach myself about credit. I learned from mentorships, YouTube, and just listening to people about credit. And it was life changing. So, but on the flip side, I've seen a lot of people that don't use it properly. I've helped a lot of people get funding. And guess what? They try to come back to me when they mess it all up. And it doesn't work like that. So that's why I tell people credit is like a loaded weapon. You really have to be careful. You have to be disciplined. You can't afford to make bad decisions when it comes to credit, because if you can't even manage 25,000, then the bank is definitely not going to give you 250,000. You really have to understand the bigger picture here. We can get millions with credit if you play the game correctly. But a lot of people, they get $25,000 credit cards and they completely ruin them. And it just is taking 10 steps backwards. So we really want to make sure that we are doing things the right way, especially with our personal credit. Now, business credit is a different story, as long as it doesn't report to our personal credit. But that's what the banks are looking at, is they're looking at, does this person have equivalent trade lines on their credit report? If they have a $25,000 or multiple $25,000 credit cards that have been paid on time, they're not abusing the credit cards, that $250,000 credit with the bank is going to look a lot more obtainable on the business side. You can 10x a lot of your credit limits from the personal to the business because it's business. But if you can't even be trusted with a $25,000 credit card on the personal side, then chances are they're not going to give it to you on the business side. So you really have to make sure that you are super disciplined and understand that these credit cards on our personal side are for decoration only. Okay, they are just there to help us open up more opportunities on the business side. Okay, credit cards are not meant to really be used and abused. They're there for great purposes. They're not really there to carry a balance from month to month. So we need them, but we have to really be careful with them. There's such a fine line there, and it's very easy to let it go past it and to mess up. So we really have to make sure that we're disciplined, we're educated, we stay consistent, because that's the one thing about credit. It takes consistency. It takes determination, and you can get frustrated with it, but that's, when it's time just to take a break, and just make sure everything's paid on time. Okay. When it comes to credit, like I said, it takes time. There's nothing fast about it. A lot of people are in a rush, but that's when they start getting declined. And you have to understand, even if you have a 720 credit score, you can get declined. And these are some of the reasons why a lot of people are seeing declines and what the bank codes mean. Because again, you have to be educated so that way you're making the best decision. There's so many people out there that will just apply and not really know what they're applying for, and they just watched a YouTube video and now they're going to apply, and it's like, no. We want to learn, write that on our bucket list. So maybe that's one of the cards that we can apply for during our credit card stacking sequence, right? But if you are declined, understand why you're declined. And these are some of the codes. And again, they're on this spreadsheet that I put together here. So it's on this. So just DM me and I'll send you this slideshow so that way you can see the codes and understand why you are getting declined out there. Because people can get declined because of so many different things, and like number one here is the level of the delinquencies on accounts. So important. That's like the number one reason why people get declined. So again, guys, you just have to be educated. I'm not going to go over all of the reasons for the declines, but a lot of times it'll just tell you you have too many inquiries or you have too many negatives. But what does this mean for us? We can understand the data and we can take action to fix it. We can make a plan and we can take action. You have to make sure that you are dedicating at least an hour a day to your credit if you really want to be serious about it, because it does take time. But the only thing, I mean, you're going to do this the best, okay? You can pay someone to help you. You can pay someone to guide you. You can pay someone to do the nitty gritty stuff. But when it comes to structuring, paying your bills on time, adding those primary trade lines, adding authorized user trade lines, that's something that you are going to be in control of. And you have to understand what's going to be best for you and for your goals, okay? Because the last 24-month period, that's the most important when it comes to credit, okay? The end goal here is to have, a number of accounts that have that 24-month period of on-time payments, especially when it comes to business funding, because I know with a lot of banks, when you go up for business funding, they're looking for a 24-month period. They really want you to have a few credit cards that have at least a 24-month period of time where you've paid them all on time. And a lot of times they want someone to have at least $2,000 to $5,000 credit limit. So it's super important for you to understand that you want to build accordingly. You can always ask for credit line increases just to, build up that. But sometimes you have to spend a lot of money on your credit cards in order to get that credit line increase, because a lot of banks will say, well, why are we going to give you a credit line increase if you don't ever use your card? So sometimes we have to put all of our spend on our credit cards and use them like a debit card. Okay, spend and then pay your cash to your credit card. There's a difference between a thick file and a thin file. So a thick file is 20 plus accounts. Our goal is anywhere between 10 and 20. Now, you could over leverage your personal credit if you have too many open accounts. So that's why when you get to that 10 to 20, you want to really just stop and then just focus on the business after that. Because once you have that 10 to 20, you just need to let those accounts age. And it's just like fine wine. The better they are with time, okay? And don't do anything else with the personal. You're good. You can now focus just on getting those business credit cards, because you don't want to over leverage your personal. And really, the goal is to get the business cards that don't report to the personal credit, because there's good debt and then there's, bad debt. And it's very easy to get bad debt. But if we do have some bad debt, we want to have it hidden under our business name. I'll let you guys go over these. There's just a lot of information in here. And again, the goal is to have more positive accounts than you do negative accounts. More recent positive activity than more recent negative activity. Okay. Now, building relationships with banks is extremely, extremely important, even if you have bad credit, because you can still open up a bank account. If you have issues opening up a bank account, get your check systems report, get your early warning report, find out why you are getting declined. A lot of times it's just something small. Like I had someone come to me the other day, they had like a $68 charge. And I'm like, just go to the bank and pay it. It'll go away. And then you can open up bank accounts. So if you have issues, that is going to hold you back from getting funding. So you really want to make sure that you don't have any issues opening up bank accounts. And now we're starting to build those relationships with the banks, so that way we can ask for a credit card, ask for a line of credit, ask for business credit cards, start on the personal side and then go over to the business side. Now, banks usually work for shareholders. Credit unions, they work for their members. So I'm a huge credit union fan. Most of the banks that I have are credit unions. Yeah, I have Chase and I have a lot of those other major banks because they're convenient. But the banks that I have the biggest limits with are the credit unions. So that's why it's so important to build those banking relationships. And there's a number of ways that you can build those banking relationships up. You want to start by building just a checking and a savings account, right? Because this information, it was a game changer for me. And that's really where I did a lot of the pledge loans. And we'll get into some of like what the pledge loan means. But as far as the top banks that I would focus on, and again, not all of these at the same time. You only want to open up about 3 bank accounts every 6 to 12 months because you don't want to open up too much too soon. So Alliant, Andrews, Apple Federal Credit Union, Banner Federal Credit Union, Candace, Chase, And Chase is going to be one of the first places that you want to apply with if you're going to be doing like a funding sequence, because Chase is very inquiry sensitive, and also they don't want you to have too many open accounts, especially on the personal side. DCU is really good, Envision, First Tech, FNBO. So there's a number of banks here, guys, that you can pick from. Navy Federal is good, Truist, USAA, Umpqua. I'm not going to list out all of them, but NFCU, that's Navy Federal Credit Union, ton of banks here. And, just pick a couple and start grooming your relationship, set up your direct deposit, because you don't want to have a bunch of trash trade lines on your credit report. This is the bank tier system and kind of how the banks look at it. So if you have tier 1 and tier 2 trade lines on your credit report, this is what that's going to look like. Citibank, Chase, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and Bank of America even has a secured credit card that you can get. I'm not a huge fan of it, but it's an option. US Bank, Capital One, Truist, those are all tier 2. Discover, a ton of great banks there. So you really want to make sure that you are building up with some of these top tier banks. So that way they're in competition and they're going to give you higher limits because they want your business. They're going to give you auto loans. They're going to give you all those things because they see that you can be trusted with their competitors. Now, what are the general guidelines for bank relationships? You want to wait at least 90 days. So when you open up your checking account and your savings account, wait 90 days. I believe with most banks, they'll make you wait 30 days before you do like any sort of pledge loan, but do a pledge loan as soon as you possibly can. Again, that's your own money that's in your savings account that you're taking a loan out against, okay? And if you're getting any sort of tax return this year, make sure, use your tax return. Any sort of large amount, use that as a personal trade line for yourself. It helps build the relationship, and again, no hard pull. And then you want to have as high of a daily balance as possible, direct deposit if possible, in the checking and the savings account. You can also do other products to help build up that relationship. You can do a money market account, a CD. I also did a CD with Navy Federal. That really helped my relationship with them because Navy Federal has their internal credit scoring model, which is built on your relationship and the amount of products that you have with them. So the more products that you have with these banks, and again, CD, money market, no credit pull, pledge loan, no credit pull, but this is all building towards our relationship. So when we do apply for whatever credit product we need, they're going to be like, oh, sure, no problem. So, and they're going to give you great rates because a lot of these banks have really good interest rates. They have really good introduction rates for their credit cards. So it's just a win-win for all of you guys. Now, when it comes to opening up a bank account, you want to have checking account, savings account. You want to have direct deposit. That's what the DD is for. And you want to do some sort of secured loan. And also I recommend doing some sort of CD, which is like some sort of money market account if you can. And if you can't right now, no problem. Just focus on doing the secured loan because that's going to help you build the credit because that secured loan, again, it's going to report to all 3 credit bureaus as an installment loan. Now, when you do fill out your application, 9 times out of 10, there's not going to be a human that's looking at it. It's all done by algorithms. It's all data, right? So that's why it's so important for you to understand you don't want to be pushed to a human. You'd rather the algorithm do it, but just put in the right information, okay? Because we want the process to go as smooth as possible. No fraud alerts. We have a job, we are employed, never put self-employed. So when they say, are you full-time? Are you an employee? Yes, I'm an employee. Yes, I'm full-time. I'm the operations manager. Depending on what area you live in, and what your goals are, what you're applying for, your income that you put on the application is going to be a direct reflection on what you get approved for. It also could, be the death of your application if you lie and you fluff it too much and you can't back it up because they could potentially ask for tax returns, bank statements, or financials. So you don't want to go too high. You don't want to go too low. You probably want to stay right around between like 85K, no more than 150K, unless you can back it or unless you're doing household income. So you just want to make sure that, you play it a little safe and until you have, some of the records to back that up. Credit unions are by far the best banks to build relationships with. Again, they are going to work for their members. DCU is a great bank, okay? And you don't have to have any sort of affiliation to join. Like Navy Federal, we're going to go over that, but you do have to have some affiliation to join. So with DCU, anyone can get in. They do offer a secured credit card. They have the pledge loan, which is the credit builder loan. No hard pull for that. There is a hard pull for the secured credit card. So you just want to make sure that you understand that. Yes, no problem. Glad to be here, guys. Andrews Federal Credit Union, another great credit union. A lot of people don't talk about it. I had never even heard of this bank when I first started learning about credit. So this just goes to show you, like all these banks, we've probably never seen a building. We've never seen an office. We've never heard of these people. But I'm telling you guys, these are the banks that you want to build the relationships with because they've got the money and they've got the assets to give. So an Andrews, again, anyone can join. They have a secured credit card. You can do the con is you're not going to be able to get your money back from the secured credit card without closing it. So it doesn't graduate. So that's the downside about it. But once you kind of get these secured cards, you kind of have to have the envision, like, I'm probably not going to get this money back for quite some time. So you can't really depend on it. With Discover, they'll probably graduate you after 7 months or so. Navy Federal, maybe a year. But, some of these cards just don't graduate. And you don't want to close cards once you open them. Once you open a secured credit card, you're pretty much like locked in for life until it graduates. I'm just going to be honest with you. Because if you close it, it'll make your credit score go down. And we just don't want that. So you want to make sure if you are, little strapped for money, you're not sure if you're going to need that money, do the secured loan route because you can still have access to that money. Not with DCU. With Navy Federal, it'll still be in your account. DCU, it'll be tied up, but you can pay it off and then the money will be back in your account. So you'll still have it. So you just want to make sure you're playing it safe. Don't overextend yourself because that's when, when you're moving too fast, you're going to run into a wall, okay? You don't want to do that. You want to make sure you move at your own pace, even if it's a lot slower than what everyone else's lane is. Go at your own speed. Don't feel like you have to keep up with all these other racers over here. Don't worry about what they're doing. You worry about what you're doing. You worry about what your goals are because everyone is different, okay? And don't feel bad about it because I probably have been the slowest one in this race, okay? And I'm telling you, I'm still in it, okay? It's not going to end anytime soon. It's a marathon, I'm not in a race. I'm not in a rush. I'm not in competition with anybody. And that's the way that you have to look at it because credit is very dangerous, okay? You want to make sure that, you make your next move, your best move for sure. Yeah, you can hit a wall. I'm telling you, it's very easy to do. I've worked with a lot of people. I've seen it happen a lot and, it happens. It happens. So don't feel bad about it. Just take it with stride, learn, and move forward with it. So this is another shared secured loan that you can get with Andrews. And it's like a pledge loan, but it's just, you're basically taking a loan out on your savings account. And you can go from 500 all the way up to 500,000. And it will help you build your credit. So it's a great way to build your relationship. And Andrews has a business side as well. Not all of these have a good business side. Like PenFed, no business. Navy Fed has business. It's good business, but some don't. Now Andrews, they are known to pull credit from 2 to 3 credit bureaus. And that's also a downside. So if you're going to be doing a credit card sequence, you really want to you just want to apply for banks that are going to be pulling from one credit bureau like Navy Federal. I can pretty much bank that they're going to be pulling from TransUnion, DCU, and PenFed. I know I can bank on them only pulling from Equifax. But Capital One, they're going to pull from all three. So that's probably not a great selection when it comes to, a credit card stacking process or funding sequence. You really want to just use places that are going to pull from one bureau. Okay. So next here we got PenFed, and I really like PenFed. In fact, PenFed was the first, a funny story. Yesterday, I bought my second laptop for my business, my second MacBook Pro. And about 4 years ago, when my daughter was like 6 months old, PenFed was the first company that gave me a $1,500 credit card because I was stuck in that like $500 approval range. My first credit card with Navy Federal was $500. And it was frustrating, man. And I called PenFed too, and I called them out on it. I'm like, can't you give me a little bit more? And they're like, oh, over time, we will. And, but they gave me $1,500, and I was grateful when I went and bought my first MacBook Pro from Best Buy with that $1,500 credit card. And I paid it off in about 3 to 6 months. But that was the first investment that I made with a credit card into my business. So I was so proud of myself. And yesterday I was able to, buy another MacBook, but I was able to buy it with a business credit card. And it just felt so right because it's not going to report to my personal credit. It's a business expense. And I know it's going to make me money. So we're not using our credit cards for something that is, just a lavish lifestyle, but we're rather using it for things that are going to be helping our business grow. And I'm telling you one thing, guys, like these credit cards, they can make you or they can break you. But that's why you just have to be stronger than you were yesterday and understand that you really have to be, I guess you can say disciplined with your spending habits. I went to the mall yesterday. I took my daughter bowling, and it was so hard for me to tell my daughter, no, we can't go everywhere and buy whatever you want. And, I knew that I had a $40,000 credit card in my pocket, but I still didn't buy anything. So that was like a turning point when I finally realized that I can't use this. I have to treat this card like my debit card. And that's where I knew that I had to erase everything I once thought I knew about credit and retrain my brain to treat my credit cards like they are my debit card. Because I know with me, like I pay my credit cards off so fast, they don't get a chance to report to my credit reports. And that's how you have to think of it. Like, this is money that I'm going to spend that I already have in my bank account because I know I have to pay it almost immediately. Or if I don't pay it before the closing date, it's going to affect my credit score. It's going to affect my credit utilization. Okay. But PenFed is a great bank and anyone can join. You just have to make a small, I think it's like $5 or $15 donation, some small donation to a charity. And that's a lot. That's how you would qualify for a lot of these different credit unions. And I actually have a spreadsheet that I did. So if you guys DM me for the spreadsheet, I have this huge spreadsheet that I put together with all these different banks and how you can join and all this. It's a lot of great information, but PenFed does not have a business side. They are going to pull from Equifax. So that's another thing that I really like about them because they're a great bank for Equifax along with DCU. And then we have Navy Federal. A lot of you guys have probably heard about Navy Federal. I have a few Navy Federal master classes on my YouTube channel. And that's how some of you may know me, is those Navy Federal master classes. But I'm telling you, Navy Federal is one of my favorite banks. However, I am going to share a very important story with you guys. I was just recently a victim of fraud on my Navy Federal account. Someone added themselves as an authorized user to my account, and they did over $11,000 in cash advances from an authorized user account on my Navy Federal. So I am like beyond myself, right? And I found this out last Friday. I log into my bank account. I've got a $40,000 credit card, two $40,000 credit cards with them. I log in and one of them's $11,000 balance. I said, oh, I instantly started sweating like, what is going on here? And I log in and it's three online cash advances from an authorized user that I have no idea. So never add anybody as an authorized user to Navy Federal because they will have access to your account. Be very careful with your login information with Navy Federal. Keep all of your credit cards locked with Navy Federal because there has been a tremendous amount of fraud going on. Funny enough, I talked to one of my friends in the credit space as well, and he does a lot of Tradelines. And I said, man, you got to hear my story about how they just got me for $11,000. And he said, same thing just happened with one of my clients. She added somebody as an authorized user to her account. She set the limit to $100, but since the card wasn't locked, they were able to complete thousands of dollars of online cash advances from their Navy Federal account. So that's why don't ever add anybody. Don't even mess around with Navy Federal when it comes to adding authorized users, okay? Because that could happen to you guys. Lock your cards when you're not using them just to be on the safe side, because it took me 3 hours to even speak with someone from their fraud department. What does that tell me? They got a shit ton of fraud going on right now. It's the season. Someone else I know just had credit card fraud. So you can keep your cards locked at all times until you're ready to use them, okay? Just be careful out there. But with Navy Federal, obviously Federal Navy Federal, you got to have someone in the military. The way that I got in, my grandfather was actually in the Navy. He was a sergeant and he had Navy Federal. So that's how I got in. But I've had a ton of people, all they did was call Navy Federal and say, oh yeah, my grandfather was in the service. They were in the Navy. They joined right then and there. It's like a $5 fee you have to pay to join, and that'll go into your bank account. So it's only $5 that you have to get. But if you had a parent in the Navy or they served in any service, parent, grandparent, spouse, sibling, children, grandchildren, they all qualify and you can get in. I don't ever recommend sharing your access code with anybody. Okay, a lot of people online make good money sharing their access code with other people. It's not worth it. Not worth it unless it is a family member, okay? You can also qualify to get in through a roommate. So if your roommate has Navy Federal, you can qualify, but you still will need that person's access number. You can also apply online if you are, in the service and you were a previous service member. You can apply right online. But a lot of times when I help people join Navy Federal, they just call. They just call right over the phone and let them know, hey, my father was in the Navy and I don't have any of his information. He passed away. No, I'm sorry. I don't have any of his information. He has passed away. Okay, so what do I need to join? Let's get to it. I already told you he passed away. I don't have any of his information. I get sad talking about it. Let's move on. You have to just be a little aggressive sometimes. So, but if you are in the process of rebuilding your credit, restructuring your credit, Navy Federal is going to be one of the first banks that you want to get because you don't have to have good credit to get approved with them. I've had a number of people get $25,000 credit cards with, a 600 something credit score, a low 600 credit score, mid 600 credit score. So I had someone get approved for their secure credit card with a 500 credit score. So they really approve people. It's about their internal scoring model, not necessarily all about your credit score. So they do have an internal score that they use, and that is, going to just increase with the more products that you have with them. How to date Navy Federal and have a good relationship with them is to get their flagship checking account over their normal. honestly, I have the normal checking account. I've been perfectly fine. Okay. But you do also want to have their savings account and just keep a little bit of money in there. Nothing crazy, maybe $1,500, something like that. You want to have direct deposits so they can see that you have consistent deposit behavior. You don't need to have 100% going in. I know I mentioned this earlier. A lot of times I repeat myself, so just bear with me. But I feel like the more times that I say it, it's going to stick with you guys, because someone told me the other day, you just repeat yourself. They said that on my YouTube. Well, I repeat myself because I get asked the same damn question over and over and over. So yeah, I tend to repeat myself because it is, that's how I learned. I kept hearing the same thing over and over and over. And finally it just freaking clicked. So hopefully you guys will do better than me and it'll click faster. The pledge loan hack. Have the money that you're going to pledge in your savings account. I just did a masterclass on the pledge loan, so watch that on YouTube. It's a good one. It's a long video. Most of my videos are long, but you got to spend some time learning because it's only going to help you in the long run. And then once you've had your checking account for 91 days, you want to go ahead and enroll in the optional overdraft protection service. And that is an extra product, and that'll help you build your relationship with them. And then you can also go over to the business side and open up a business bank account with them for your LLC or your corporation. Of course, there's no rush on that. Don't apply for anything until you've been with them for 90 plus days. You can apply for the pledge loan after 30 days. I recommend doing that as soon as possible. But no credit products unless you've already had them. Even if you haven't applied for anything, if you've already had them, even if you didn't have direct deposit, but you've just had an account open with them, that's fine. Okay. This is a little information about the overdraft protection. Let's talk about primary trade lines, positive primary trade lines. Now, I shared my story with you guys earlier about how I added a bunch of trash trade lines to my credit, and boy, I regret it to this day, okay? I added so many of those crappy trade lines, Tomo and Pedal, and sometimes we have to, but I added too much. Too many secured credit cards, too many of the not so great, trade lines. So that's why I always teach people to add as many like bank trade lines as possible, credit unions, primary, grade A, tier 1, 2, or 3, or 4 trade lines. No, crappy, trade lines that just popped up. Okay. And we're going to go over some of those because I don't know if you guys remember, but there used to be this jewelry company that was out there, My Jewelers Club, and you guys had to pay I was like $99 a month, something like that, paid for a membership, and they would report a $5,000 trade line onto your credit report. Well, they went out of business, and all of the other companies that tried to mimic them also went out of business because it's not real, and the banks don't take those type of trade lines serious. So you're just wasting money at this point, okay? One of the things that you can do to help increase your credit cards is ask for a credit line increase every 6 months. Now, I have all my clients that have Navy Federal, they're on schedule. Every 6 months, they go in through the app, they apply for the credit line increase, and we're going to ask for an $8,000 credit line increase. $8,000, not $10,000, not $9,000, not $8,500. We're asking for $8,000. They will give you $8,000 every 6 months. Don't be greedy. It's going to take time to get there. Navy Federal will give you $80,000 in unsecured credit. That's the max. You can have 3 credit cards, okay? Don't try to get say the flagship, you want an $80,000 credit card. Once you have an $80,000 flagship, you're maxed out. You cannot go over $80,000 unsecured. So right now I'm maxed out with Navy. I have 3 credit cards with them, and my limit is $80K between all 3 of them. One of them is a very, very low, very low. I think it's like $1,500, my American Express. So that was my first credit card with them. So that's why I would never recommend anyone go after the Amex one. But I was doing that because I wanted to get into Amex on the business side. And that's actually what helped me get into American Express on the business side and get me five or six American Express business credit cards. So that's a whole nother story. And I actually have a masterclass on that on my YouTube channel about the American Express and how to get a ton of American Express cards. But with Navy Federal, it's a great trade line. It's bank issued. Once you get the pledge loan, I don't know if I probably skipped over that. Once you get the pledge loan, you want to set it up on auto pay. How do you get the pledge loan? You call them, you set it up over the phone, you set it up on auto pay, set it and forget it. Okay. If you are doing a higher amount, obviously you want to pay that down pretty quickly, like within 90 days or so. Watch my video on YouTube. I break it down how to do all of that pledge loan stuff. But you also want to have a savings secured loan, which is not a CD, but it's a savings secured loan. Navy Federal is not the only one that offers those types of loans. There's other places that you can do, like the pledge loan hack. PenFed is one of those places. I have a video, and we're going to talk about some of those other places that you can do the pledge loan, but a lot of banks out there offer them. So if you have a bank and you're not sure, you can ask them if they do a savings secured loan or a pledge loan, if they offer one. If not, open up a bank account with Navy, with PenFed, with DCU, Andrews. They all do them. So those are all great primary trade lines. Look for savings secured loans, not a CD. We went over that a little bit as well. And I don't know if I mentioned this already, but if you do a secured credit card with Navy Federal, the maximum for the secured credit card is $5,000. There is no maximum for the secured loan. I've seen people go over $200,000. So, and that's because they were trying to get a home equity line of credit. And that's the example that I used in my pledge loan masterclass. So I show you how they did a $200,000 pledge loan, and then they got approved, I think, for like $250,000 home equity line of credit. But here are some other institutions where you can do the pledge loan hack: PenFed, Andrews, Space Coast, Launch Credit Union, Air Force Credit Union, New Vision, Patelco, SDF Credit Union, NIH, Langley. Now, beware of some of these crappy trade lines that sound, too good to be true. Like the My Jewelers Club, I went over that example where they would give you a $5,000 trade line reported to your credit. Same thing with New Coast Direct. Those were both shut down. Sable One, they're terminated. BlockFi, they went bankrupt. Figure Pay, Zorro Card, all of those type of Tomo, Petal, Zorro, Sable, all those cards that are like not real banks. Basically, if you can't get funding from them in the future, there is no point in building a relationship with them. You are wasting your money. You would be better off doing a pledge loan with a grade A bank like one of these banks and build your own primary trade lines than using some of these crappy, just horrible trash trade lines that scream, bankrupt. Okay. Avoid subprime lenders. Okay. And I know sometimes it can be hard because you might not have the best credit score, but that's why it's so important for you to build the relationships directly with the credit unions, because you don't need to have the best credit score, especially with Navy Federal. And you can get auto loans. You can get pretty much anything that you need with Navy Federal. You definitely want to avoid First Premier, Open Sky, BBVA, Compass. They're like no longer either. They kind of came into Truist somehow. So, a lot of these places, you just want to make sure that you're building with good grade A banks that are not going to like go out of business and, disappear a few years later. And, you definitely don't want to use a lot of those credit builder accounts like Chime, Credit Strong, Self. Again, if they don't offer for you to get funding in the future, be aware, okay? And a lot of the information that we see on social media, it looks great. It looks good. Oh my God, I cannot believe it. You can get $200,000 in funding. What? Again, guys, be careful about the information that you see online, because this information right here, this is the real information. It's not what you want to hear, because it doesn't sound as good as someone telling you all of the fool's gold that they do. But again, if it looks too good to be true, chances are it probably is, because if it was really all that easy, then everyone would have perfect credit. Everyone would have business funding. Just be careful out there, because there's a lot of stories that be told. I go on social media and I scroll every once in a while, and I see the BS that's out there, and it looks great. It looks good. It's good content. It's eye-catching, but it's just simply not true, or they're just not telling you the full story. Okay, so beware. Yes, very, very honest. And that's hard, because that's not what a lot of people want to hear. They don't want to hear the truth. They want to hear, yeah, you'll have a perfect credit score in 30 days. Yeah, we can help you. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yes. No, I'm sorry. I'm going to tell you the truth. I just had a client come to me, and she has like a 400 credit score. She literally just let everything go. She had so much credit. And when she first came to me, she told me it was just an auto loan. Come to find out, it's everything on her credit report that she stopped paying for. And that was after she paid. I found all this out, and I'm just like, oh my God. She keeps asking me, how long is it going to take? I said 6 to 12 months. You don't have any positive credit left. So that's even harder. So, you just have to really understand, there's different situations out there. Sometimes it will take some people longer than others. So let's talk about rental primaries. Rentals are a great way to add a primary trade line to your credit report, and you can have one rental agreement and have multiple trade lines from that one rental agreement, and you can add 24 months of back history to those trade lines, which helps you. So especially if you're looking to, get new housing, applying for a home, those things are going to help you, because they show, those on-time payments. And you can backdate them for up to 24 months. Boom Pay is my favorite, because it's the cheapest. There's no landlord involvement. You just have to connect your bank, be able to verify things, and they report to all 3 credit bureaus, and it's super cheap. So I'm a huge fan of Boom Pay. You can also backdate 24 months of history. I think they charge you like $8 or $10 or something like that. It's super affordable. And you can pay with Zelle, Venmo, PayPal. The only thing that they don't accept is cash or money order. And honestly, you should not be paying your rent with cash or money order any longer in this day and age, because everything needs to be tracked. And the great thing about electronic is it's all tracked, and you can prove that you paid it. And you can get credit from places like Boom Pay and stuff like that. Rent reporters is not as hard. They're not going to require all of that, but they do require to verify with the property owner, which is a pain in the rear. I was actually using rent reporters a few years ago when I was in my first little rental, my little 1-bedroom place. It was like a little shack in the Bay Area. I'm from Northern California, so it's super expensive to live out here. And even that little shack was really expensive. It was like $2,000. So it was super expensive. And it was a 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom condo. It was just horrible. But at any rate, I was asking the landlord if he could verify my rental payments so I can get, history and build credit. He told them he didn't want to be bothered with it. Okay. So that's what really irritates me about rent reporters. They will report it to Equifax and to TransUnion, but they have to, communicate constantly with the landlords. And some landlords just simply don't want to be bothered. With Boom Pay, there is no landlord involvement. So that's the great thing about it. You can have multiple trade lines for your rent. Probably wouldn't go more than 2, because you really don't need more than 2, and you got to pay for them. But like I said, Boom Pay is super affordable. It's like a couple bucks a month, so it's really cheap. And then as far as, if you want to really get in with some of the bigger banks, just to start off with, I would go Chase, Citibank, Discover, Capital One, and American Express. I would definitely go Chase first, because again, they're going to be the most, I guess, strict. Strict when it comes to new accounts, inquiries, things of that nature. So I was just working with one of my clients, and when we first started working together, she had just been declined from Chase. And I said, okay, well, we're going to, we'll just work on a few things and give it some time. We opened up her business bank account with them. She's been running some money through there. So it's been about 6 months, and she just messaged me that she got approved for $10,000 on the Chase business. So that was a pretty big win, because she's like, well, should I apply again? I'm confused, because they sent her an invitation in the mail, or some sort of invitation to apply for their business credit card. I said, absolutely. If they sent you an invitation, go for it. And she went for it, and they were approved. So that just goes to show you, sometimes it's not a matter of like, it's a matter of timing. Like, it's not the right time. Either your business hasn't been established long enough, which for her, she was a brand new business. And then when she got approved, she was about 1.5 years old. So still under that 2-year mark. But, in that first year, it's really hard because of the age of your business. So sometimes you just have to wait a couple months and then reapply, and you can get approved. That's what happened with me with American Express. When I first applied, my business was just too new. So as far as secured credit cards, when we're starting off, you want to definitely try to find ones that don't have an annual fee. You want to have a path to graduation. Like, hey, you have to look at it like, okay, we're building this relationship. What can you do for me in the future? Do you offer business funding? Do you offer this? Do you offer other credit products? Like, what can you do for me if I do a secured card with you? And sometimes when you do a secured loan, you don't necessarily need to do a secured card, because you already built up that relationship. So when you apply for your credit card, you don't have to go secured, which is nice. But if you do, because you don't have any credit cards that are in your name, you definitely want to make sure that they graduate. You want to make sure that they return your deposit, and that it's with an institution that, again, is going to give you diverse credit products. So let's talk about the best secure credit cards. Navy Federal, of course, the N Rewards card is great because it graduates. You'll get your money back. It is a hard credit pull, but again, that's fine as long as you get approved. You can pre-qualify for it right online or through the app. And if they pre-qualify you and if the green cash reward cards comes up, go for that one, because this one is secured, meaning you have to put up your cash as collateral, and whatever cash you have that you're going to be putting up is going to be your credit limit. You can go up to $5,000 with Navy Federal. Discover It credit card. I like Discover It because Discover is a great bank, and this is one of my favorite secure credit cards because they will send you your deposit back in the form of a check within 7 months or so. You just got to make sure that you spend, pay. Don't let over a 15% credit utilization report. Make sure everything is paid on time. You're paying frequently. Again, use it like a debit card. Use it for all of your gas, groceries, spending, insurance, cable, whatever bills you have, put it all on there. But then like 2 days later, pay it with your cash that's in your bank account. So you're using like a debit card, but you're using it for a purpose to build it up. You also get rewards. There's no annual fee. Graduation says 6 months here, but it's actually 7 months. So it is going to be a little bit longer, and it could be longer than that. It's not guaranteed to graduate at 7 months. It's all about how you use it. But if you keep the concept of spending, paying, there's no reason why you should not graduate after 7 months. There's the good starter cards here. We have Chase. They're either going to be pulling from Experian or Equifax. Bank of America, they also have a secured credit card. I don't like it because it never graduates, so I'm not a huge fan of it. But again, if you absolutely have to get it, it's there for you. They're going to be pulling from Experian. Even their all secured credit cards are going to require a hard credit pull. Secured loans do not require a hard credit pull, okay? American Express, I like them for the personal side and the business side. You can get a ton of credit cards and charge cards on the business side that don't report to your personal credit. Discover, they're going to be pulling from Experian. US Bank, they also have a secured credit card. They're going to be pulling from Experian. Citibank, I like Citibank. They also underwrite for a lot of store credit cards that will offer a 0% interest for up to 18 months. They're going to be pulling from Equifax or Experian. There's also the Costco Citi card. There's the Citi Cash Rewards card. There's a tons of different Citi cards, but make sure that you apply for the one that has 0% for 18 months. So you can take advantage of that with your purchases. Capital One, they are a good starter card, but they are going to pull your credit from all 3 credit bureaus. So you're going to get a hard pull from everyone versus these other places that may only pull from 1, 2 at the max. Again, use your credit card like a debit card, guys. You want to avoid risky behavior. Let me tell you guys what risky behavior looks like, okay? If you go to a car dealership and you try to buy a car with your credit card, that looks like risky behavior, okay? If you send yourself an invoice and you pay it with your own credit card, that is risky behavior. I was scrolling on social media and I saw this lady's video and she said, "Oh, this is the fastest way that you can get high limit credit cards." And she went on to say that basically you need to open up a QuickBooks account and send yourself a invoice from one business to another and pay it with your credit card. That's one of the fastest ways that you can get blacklisted from not only QuickBooks, but thousands of other merchant accounts, is by doing that type of risky behavior. You really have to be careful. So that's why I tell people, you want to make sure that you're just doing your normal spending habits, especially with American Express, because they will pick that up. Their AI is so intelligent. Their systems are beyond, me. They're just so great. Like the amount of fraud that I had with Navy Federal would have never happened with American Express, because they would have sent me some sort of notification that someone was being added as an authorized user. They would also sent me a notification had they noticed any sort of transactions that are out of character for me, which an online cash advance is out of character for a lot of people, right? So they go about character. They know, okay, this person spends a lot of money on gas, on groceries, on shopping, on this, on that, in these areas, right? So they know your behavior as a consumer. So that's why you can put all of your normal spending on there and still achieve the same goals. Because if you could pay your rent with a credit card, do it. You're still going to have the cash to pay it. If you could pay your auto loan using your credit card, sometimes we can leverage it using third-party sites like, some of these plastique and stuff. It's a fee, but if you're looking to grow your limits on your credit cards, these are ways that, you could do it. If you send yourself an invoice, that's a huge fee because you got to pay the merchant fee. And if you get caught, that's a big fee that you got to pay as well. But gradually spend. Don't just spend a bunch of money when you first get the account. Like go up, like spend 200, 300, thousands, gradually. Okay. Step by step. Don't just go full in. Okay. Banks don't like that. They like slow. Okay. Move accordingly. And then that is going to trigger credit line increases automatically. Funny enough, I use my Apple Card a lot. I spend, pay, spend, pay, spend, pay. And Apple just sent me a notification the other day like, hey, we just increased your credit score. I didn't ask for it. I wasn't even thinking about it, but they increased my credit limit by $2,000. I was like, oh, cool. Okay, great. And that's happened with Navy Federal with me before as well. So a lot of times it'll automatically trigger a credit line increase, but you can always ask every 6 months if you're not getting it automatically. I talked earlier briefly about statement date versus the due date. So this is something you really want to pay attention to, because I cannot tell you how many people I've talked to on the phone from Capital One or from the banks where I'm like, hey, what's my statement date? Oh, your due date? Yeah, well, your due date's the 16th. No, not my due date, my statement date. You mean like the date that your credit card's due? No. Your statement date is the last day of your billing cycle. And a lot of times they don't even know what you're talking about because, again, they don't know this information. They're just doing what they're told to do by Capital One. But you have 2 dates that you have to be focused about. Number one is your due date. When is this bill due? Okay. Obviously, you want to make sure that you have auto pay set up. However, you can make additional payments in addition to your auto pay. So your closing date, which is your billing statement date, is the last day of your billing cycle. So your closing date, which is also your statement date, is going to be June 21st, according to this example. So I know 5 days prior to the last day of my billing cycle, which in this case is the 21st, so around the 15th of every month, I want to make sure that I have this account at a zero balance. And I want to allow this account to report to the credit bureaus as zero before I start using it again, because I don't want to allow the credit bureaus to report my credit utilization, which is going to take down my credit score. I want pretty much all my credit cards, except for maybe one or two that have a higher limit, to report to my credit bureaus. That's fine. But for accounts like this, because I think this account only has like a $3,500 limit for Capital One, I don't want a limit or a balance to report on this, because it could potentially bring down my credit score by reporting a utilization. So instead of paying it on the due date, I pay it 5 days prior to the statement date. This is how you can hide your utilization. You can also balance transfer. So if you have one card, you can balance transfer it to another card. If you just got a 0% APR credit card, you can balance transfer to that card, and the credit bureaus cannot see your utilization. So that's another way that you can hide your credit utilization. Here is another example with Navy Federal. You can see that the billing statement, the due date is on the 6th, and then the statement date is on the 9th. It says right here, statement closing date. That closing date is what you really want to pay attention to, because that's the date that you know you need to pay prior, so a balance will not report. If you pay it by the closing date or the statement date, you won't have a payment due on your due date. So I hope that made sense for you guys. But I always, I'm a visual learner, so when I see things, it always makes a lot more sense. But if you do have to have a balance on your credit card, hopefully it can stay under 10%, no more than 15%. And, even when you're looking for authorized user accounts, which is what we're going to talk about now, we call them AUs, authorized user accounts. This is where you are being put onto someone's account as an authorized user. So say, for example, I have my Capital One account, and you're like, hey, you have a zero balance on that account and you have a great payment history on their account. Can you add me? Yes, because maybe you don't have as much of a history. You don't have, a $3,500, trade line quite yet. That would really help you. Most people want high limits, so we would add higher limit trade lines to their credit report, which are going to help them acquire higher primary trade lines. So we'll add maybe like a $25,000 authorized user account, and that will help someone get higher limits in their name. That's exactly how I was able to overcome that $500 credit limit that I was stuck in forever. Was I finally learned about authorized user accounts and how to add them to my credit report in order for me to get higher limit accounts as well. So they are super helpful for adding history and adding those higher limits. Because if you just have a bunch of credit cards that are $500, what makes you think the next bank's just going to give you $25,000? It's probably not likely, right? Because you have to have comparable credit on your credit report. Now, if you have a bunch of $500 credit cards in your name, and then you add maybe like a $15,000 AU and a $20,000 AU, next time you go and apply, the banks might say, oh, well, let's give them an average. We'll give them 10K, 12K, something like that. Because again, a lot of times it's just a computer system and they're just going to go off of averages. So if your average is just 500, you're just going to get another 500. But when you start adding those higher limits, that's when you're going to see the bar start getting raised, okay? And ideally, when you are looking for authorized user accounts, you want to go anywhere, history just depends on your goals and your situation, but anything over 2 years is good. I recommend over 5 years because you want that history to help you. The history is going to give you the highest impact. So that's why you want to go with something that has a decent history, 5 years, 10 years. And of course, the older the cards are, the more expensive they are if you're buying them. But if you do have family members that can add you as an authorized user, you just want to make sure that they have 100% on-time payment history. They have a very low credit utilization, like under 15%, because if you get added to a $10,000 credit card and this person has a $5,000 credit limit or credit balance, you're going to inherit that debt on your credit report. We don't want that. That's counterproductive. So we don't even want that trade line. We only want trade lines that have relatively like a zero balance or no more than like a 15% credit utilization. So all of the trade lines that we offer, we guarantee 100% payment history, and we also guarantee that they have less than a 15% utilization. Ideally 5K or more. For you guys, I would say probably 10, 15, 20K. That's probably where you guys want to be because the goal is to get higher limits and to raise the bar for you to get higher limits, those 25K personal trade lines, so we can leverage them on the business side. We want to get those great trade lines, those grade A bank trade lines with either Chase, Bank of America, Citibank, Wells Fargo. We have USAA. Again, the only banks that we're not going to be offering anymore are Navy Federal. We do still have some in our inventory, but I'm not selling them because of what's going on with Navy Federal right now. But if you have a family member and they're willing to add you, great. But you do have to give them your access number. Okay. So that's why it becomes a little tricky with that. No late payments. If someone has a trade line, they're like, yeah, I've got a $25,000 trade line. It has a zero balance, but I have a late payment on it. No good. It's over. We cannot use that. Has to have 100% on-time payment history. This is not a cosign type of thing. Obviously, Navy Federal people will have access to your account, but with any other bank, there is no access. The card is mailed to you. There's no risk. The only risk is Navy Federal. I don't know why they have it set up like that, but I'm sure it's going to be changing soon because obviously they're having a lot of issues with that. So you don't ever want to co-sign for anyone, okay? Never, ever co-sign. The most that we are willing to do is an authorized user account and just inherit that wonderful account history, payment history, and credit limits onto our credit accounts, okay? Next is do-it-yourself credit repair. Honestly, I'm a huge advocate of do-it-yourself because you are going to do it the best. You care the most about your situation. You have the most knowledge about your situation, and you can stay on top of your situation. Now, you can always hire people that help you. I do credit repair for some people. I try not to do it. I don't take regular credit repair clients anymore. You have to be a coaching client of mine in order for me to do your credit in this day and age because credit repair doesn't work without credit coaching. You have to understand all of the things that you have to do on your end and how negative items affect you. And that's why it's so important for some people just to settle up some of the old debts that just aren't going to go away. Like if we've gone through credit repair for a year and you still have these old accounts that are charged off that are affecting you, it's like, let's just settle that. If that's yours, let's just get that out of the way. I had to do that with a couple accounts in when I was going through it. So, it's something that is necessary as you're going through credit repair. Now, obviously, we don't want to do that. That's the last resort. We don't want to do that too soon. We want to try to get whatever we can off. But that's why it's so important for us to manage our credit properly so we don't get charge-offs, we don't get collections, and we don't get these things. Inquiries are not what's holding you back. I know a lot of people like, oh, I was denied because I have too many inquiries. No, I have 7 inquiries on my TransUnion credit report, and I just got 2 new accounts the other day. So it's definitely not inquiries. Obviously, I know what banks are not going to approve me with like 7 or 8 inquiries, right? But what's affecting someone the most and why they're getting declined is due to late payments, okay, which is the hardest thing to fix. Collection accounts, one of the easiest things to fix. Charge-offs, mid, because they're with the original creditor most of the time. And if it's fairly recent, it's harder. The older the accounts are, the easier they are to get off your credit report, right? Bankruptcies, you can get those off as well, especially if they're over 2 years. A lot of times it's much harder to validate all of these type of accounts the older that they are. You will not go to jail for disputing things. It is our right. In other countries, it is against the law. But here in America, we have what's called the Fair Credit Reporting Act. And there are laws that cover us as consumers. So you have to understand who we're dealing with when it comes to the CRAs, which are the credit reporting agencies. They are not a government agency. They are not anyone special. They are literally a public corporation that is a for-profit company. So, and they are public. Experian is public. Equifax is public. They are all for-profit corporations, okay? All they care about is making money. Who are their clients? Not us. Who are their clients? The banks. The banks are their clients. They make money off us as well, no doubt about that, but we cost them more than we make them. So that's why they're willing to make our life a lot harder than what it should be if you don't stay consistent, okay? And that's one of the things they will try to do everything they can to discourage you in fixing your credit. But we have to be better than that, okay? They do not care about us. All they care about is the profits. Again, we are not their customer, okay? They could care less about us. Okay, the FCRA, it was created in 1970 to create fair and reasonable reportings when it comes to the credit agencies. Do they follow the laws? Absolutely not. Okay? Absolutely not. There are so many errors on credit reports, and I don't care if it's 1 cent off. That is still an error. Okay? Information must be 100% accurate. If a date is off, that is not 100%. That is grounds for deletion. Okay? Don't give up until you get what you want, okay? They are going to make it hard for you. Again, they might say, oh, we've updated this account and they've changed nothing. Don't listen to them. Continue to challenge them on things, okay? Know the laws. The laws are on your side. This is how you guys get things deleted, is leveraging the consumer law in your letters, okay? You can still use ChatGPT. Just plug in some of those consumer laws, protect yourself, and ChatGPT will literally spit out a really professional letter. And you can tell ChatGPT, make this sound like it's from, an educated consumer. Make this sound like it's from an angry consumer. Make this sound like it's from a funny consumer, to make it give more characteristics. Most of the time, it's not even a person reading our letters, but we're just trying to get through the eOscar system to make them think that we're not a cookie cutter letter. We're not a, credit repair company. We want custom letters that no one else has used. Okay. And you don't need to use the entire letter from ChatGPT. I just use little sections of it and kind of paste all my stuff together and use what's best. So again, just sometimes you got to think outside of the box and do what's not normal. Okay. I'm always testing things out and trying new things, because that's how you find hacks. Okay. And again, I have a little cheat sheet that I use. I just sent it out, so just send me a DM and I can send that to you. eOscar is what the credit repair or credits reporting companies use to manage their disputes, because they get millions and millions of disputes from online to mail, and they use a computer system. Now, whenever you're using a computer system, that leaves even more room for error, because it is AI. So we want to get through to a person to actually help us. Sometimes it takes follow-up phone calls, and you want to just get over to the fraud department, because if they are not reporting 100% accurate information, then it is fraud. We're not saying that it's identity theft, but hey, you have fraudulent information on my credit report and I demand that you delete it, okay? If you've not heard back from them after 30 days, you can send them a follow-up. You can call them. Sometimes they may have not received your letter, so you just have to stay on top of it. But don't send multiple requests like within a 30-day period, because it's just going to mess you up. But you have to give them a reasonable amount of time to correct it. Reasonable amount of time is about 60 days, and then you can start leveraging other places like the CFPB, which is also a government agency that helps. I wouldn't say govern, they kind of govern the credit reporting agencies, although, you know, the credit reporting agencies still do what they want. And a lot of times they get sued because they just don't follow the rules. They don't follow the law. But the CFPB, cfpb.gov, is where you can file a complaint against the credit bureaus to help, you know, support your claim, and just upload whatever proof that you have. So if you have a letter that you paid off an account, or that some sort of information is inaccurate, you can upload that to the CFPB and to the Better Business Bureau and do a complaint against the credit bureaus. You can do it against the collection companies, against the banks, whomever you want, but just do it one complaint at a time. So if you're doing a complaint, you're just going to do a complaint against Experian or just TransUnion. So you do it one at a time. And sometimes even that, you know, does not get it done. You know, it really takes consistency, and, you know, every situation is a little bit different, but you kind of just have to go with the flow of things. If they're asking for additional documentation, you got to send what you can. You can send a screenshot of your credit reports to prove the error. You can send a letter from the bank showing that it's wrong, or whatever the case may be. If after any reinvestigation, any information is found to be inaccurate, incomplete, or cannot be verified, the credit reporting agencies must delete or modify the information from the consumer file. So you can use 15 U.S. Code 1681I, which is the procedure in case of disputed accuracy, because again, everything must be 100% accurate. Okay. Now, we obviously would prefer them to delete anything, so that's why the instruction is very important. You want to make sure that you tell them to delete. You don't want to say update. You want to say, this is the account name, this is the account number. I demand you delete it, okay? And let them know that they have been found to be in a violation of the law. There's a number of different laws that you can use. On my cheat sheet, I have all of these different laws as well. So you can use the 15 U.S.C. Code 1681N, which is civil liability for willful noncompliance. And you can let them know that you plan to proceed with litigation should they choose to ignore any further requests. And sometimes it does take, you know, getting paid for violations, suing them in your local state court or federal court, because this is all civil, okay? Mainly FCRA violations, you can get paid because honestly, they have a budget for when they get sued on everything, guys. It's crazy, but it is true. And the easiest method is through the arbitration. Now, after you have gone through that, and again, you don't need a lawyer to go through all of this. You can either go to small claims court, you can go to your federal court, but you can file against them. And a lot of times they're going to want to settle before anything, especially if it's under like $5,000. Secondary credit bureaus. A lot of us have never even heard of these companies, but they have more data on us than we know about us. Like, it's crazy. LexisNexis is the number one. A lot of skip tracing companies, collection companies, they use LexisNexis to gain intel about us. That's why a lot of people will start getting harassed at their job and things of that nature, because these secondary credit agencies, or data companies as I should call them, they have data about us. So that's why I keep all of these opted out or frozen. You don't want to freeze or opt out of check systems or early warning, because those are for banking purposes only. But for the secondary credit agencies, or data agencies, as I like to call them, LexisNexis, Innovis, ARS, I mean, there's a ton of them out there. You want to opt out and freeze. If they want information about you, tell them to pull your credit report, okay? But definitely get them opted out or clear them. Now, another thing that you can kind of like, I don't know if you guys have ever experienced this, but if you apply for auto insurance, if you have bad credit, your auto insurance is going to be very high because your credit report says that you're a risk. And a lot of times the car insurance companies are pulling data from these third-party companies. So that's why I tell people opt out of all of these secondary data companies. So that way, if they want information about you, you control the data that they get, which is from your credit report. Now, what's the timeline for credit repair? I always tell people 6 to 12 months, or it could be longer depending on where you're starting. Now, prime example of someone that's probably going to need at least a year's worth of credit repair is the client that I just took on. That's going to be a nightmare because when she first came to me, she told me, oh, I need a car ASAP. I just crashed my car. The insurance didn't cover it, so I stopped paying for it. Okay, no problem. That's no big deal. But when I get her credit report, I have learned that not only has she stopped paying for her auto loan, but she has stopped paying for all of her credit bills. Now, had I known that before I took her on as a client, I probably would not even taken her on as a client because that's just a really bad situation. Basically, you just gave up and stopped paying for everything. And those type of accounts are really hard to get off your credit report because you were just paying them from your bank account. So it's not identity theft and, everything's just maxed out. So, every situation is different, but generally it does take time to get the negative items removed. But it also takes time to establish positive payment history. And that simply takes time. So when I was repairing my credit, it took me a good 2 years. In the first year, I was in the 700 range, but I was still getting denied for things because my credit report just wasn't strong enough. It just didn't have enough history. It didn't have enough data for them to feel really confident in me. But now, I'm 4 years in on most things. So I'm grade A now. So sometimes it just takes time and you just have to learn how to have a really good long-term successful relationship with credit because it can go sour. It could go sour pretty quickly. Okay. So again, we want to clean up our personal information. We want to freeze the secondary credit bureaus. You can apply for no credit check items like, the pledge loans and things like that. Start disputing all of that information. You can also request an investigation from the collection company, the creditor. You can request validation. All of these things, there's a number of ways that you can get items removed, including using, the cfpb.gov and bbb.org. to make complaints, but it's at least a 60-day process. When you're requesting validation, you can send a letter to the creditor. Again, ChatGPT. Tell it, hey, write me a letter of a letter of validation to the collection company or the creditor, because believe it or not, there is a difference. So we have what's called the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, but that is third-party collection companies. That does not include original creditors. So there is a difference between original creditors and third-party. That's why it's a lot easier to get collection accounts off your credit because they're a third party and they have to follow a whole nother set of laws versus original creditors. But that's not to say that you can't get charge-offs from original creditors taken off. It's really just being consistent, persistent, and challenging them. And sometimes it takes 6 months. Sometimes it takes a year. I will be the first person to tell you that because this is what I've done for thousands of people. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you guys because it's just simply not the truth. Okay. I know it sounds good. A lot of people on social media and Instagram say they can get you right in 30, 60 days, but, it doesn't work like that anymore. It simply doesn't. 5 years ago, it was so easy to do a credit sweep. But this day and age, it's a lot more challenging because of the amount of artificial intelligence that they have and just the amount of security that is out there and things of that nature. It's just becoming harder and harder to run from your past, especially when it just happened. So that's why it's so important for you not to, just have those type of things where you're like, I took too much on. I can't handle all this, right? That's exactly what happened with the client that I'm working with now. And I actually helped her get funding like a couple of years ago. All that shit's on her credit. And it's just sad because she simply took on too much debt, and it was all under her personal credit. So that's another thing, is like, if you're going to take on $100,000 of debt, we got to do it under the business. We don't want to do it under the personal, where, if you, take a wrong turn, you're not going to be able to afford those payments. And they are going to be hefty payments, especially on the personal side. So charge-offs, again, they're different than collections. I'm not going to totally go into them, but basically they are with the original creditor. So there's a few things that you can do. You can request that 1099-C, and you can go through the removal process. You can settle it. There's, it just depends on your situation, what's going to be best for you. I'm not opposed to settling old debt with some people, and I've helped a lot of people settle their debt. The goal would be 50 cents or less on the dollar. Okay. You're not going to pay full price. Heck no, we're 50%. Okay. Or less. I always start at 20%, and then I work my way up to 50%. Inquiries. Any inquiries that are not associated with an open account, get rid of them. Delete them. Call the credit bureaus. Call the credit bureaus tomorrow. Get them deleted. Okay, that's the fastest way you can do it, is over the phone. You can't really dispute inquiries online anymore. At least with Experian, they will not let you dispute inquiries online. You can do it through the mail, but oftentimes they want you to include an FTC report with it. But that's why I say just call them, and get them done right over the phone. If the person that you're talking with over the phone isn't talking about nothing, or they're not trying to help you, hang up, call back, and talk to somebody else. Call towards the end of the day, because they're just going to do it, chances are, right? But you definitely want to make sure that you're talking to the fraud department, because they are the ones that have the authority to delete these from your credit, okay? And you'll get transferred like a number of different places, but you just have to say, is this the fraud department? Am I transferred to the fraud department? Is this the fraud department? Yes? Okay, great. And then you go into your spiel and into your story. Do not explain your story until you have verified that you are in the fraud department, okay? Because they will try to transfer you all of these different places. Because again, when you're calling the credit bureaus, if you haven't noticed, a lot of these people that work for them, they are not in the US. So they don't know the first thing about credit. So that's why it's like, you don't really want to explain too much. Less is better, okay? Just be direct and simple. Don't overspeak. Just say, hey, this is fraudulent. I don't know too much about it. You got to delete it. Okay, let's talk about dealing with collection accounts. Now, collections are a lot easier to get off of your credit report, simply because they are a third party. And a lot of times when they buy your debt, they buy it on like a spreadsheet. They don't have proof. They don't have a contract. They don't have nothing. So when you start challenging them on it, they're like, oh, we'll delete it. We don't want no smoke. And it's done. They might sell it to somebody else, and it'll pop back up on your credit report under a different collection company, because they're sneaky little turds like that, and they do stuff like that. But that's the name of the game. They just resell it. You will receive a dunning letter in the mail, and if you do not respond within 30 days, then they will assume that you owe this debt, and they will start reporting it. But you want to make sure, if you get a letter in the mail, you get that dunning letter in the mail, you respond within a 30-day period and let them know that you do not have any relationship with them. You dispute and deny any alleged balance they say you owe. Okay? You have no relation with them, and you dispute and deny this alleged account. Okay? Now, you can use 15 USC code 1692C. And again, you can look all this up on the Cornell Law website. On my cheat sheet, it's connected to the Cornell Law, which is the actual law. Don't take my word for it. Read the law. And if you do it right, they will not continue to report that collection to your credit because they know better. They cannot report a collection that has not been fully validated. Okay. And a lot of times they don't have any sort of proof. They are very aggressive. They are very scary. They will threaten you. Okay. Do not speak to them over the phone. Okay. You can tell them, I cease and desist all phone call communication. If you wish to communicate, it must be in writing only. Okay. And deal with them from there. And if they call you, it's a violation. So that's realms for deletion. But collection accounts, you really have to just use your knowledge. And again, watch some of my videos. I have a ton of videos on YouTube. There's a ton of information out there. If you need coaching one-on-one, I offer that as well. But that's what I focus on is the one-on-one coaching because a lot of people have different situations and sometimes it's hard to navigate through all of this stuff. You know what I mean? So what if you go through all this and, the validation's not working, which happened to me. It happened to me. I felt like, man, this is the end. I'm going to have to pay this stuff. My past is finally catching up with me. Well, that's not the end. We can do what's called a truth affidavit and say basically that this account is denied and disputed. It has been alleged and have it notarized. Okay. You can get it notarized for free at most banks, or you can just simply take it to like a UPS store and have it notarized and send a copy of your affidavit to the collection company and also to the credit bureaus. You can also go after the collection company. You can try to sue them. If you want to work with a FCA attorney, sometimes you can. I personally think it's a waste of money because they do the same thing that we're all doing here, right? Is they basically, but they have went to law school and they can charge you a lot more. But if you are worried about a collection company being like fraud, you can look it up. This is the website to make sure that they are actually licensed in your state to collect debt. And you can go to the NMLS, consumeraccess.org. You can also check the statute of limitations for debt in your state. So when does that happen? So from the first time that you became delinquency, that's kind of like when the time clock starts, right? With them, they will change the time clock. They can only, in most states, I'm in California, they can only sue you for a debt 4 years, from 4 years from the date of first delinquency. But what happens is sometimes when a collection company gets your account, they will change the date. And that, basically restarts your time clock. And most states, like I said, it's about a 4-year period that they can sue you. And a lot of these collection companies, they try to bully you. They try to change the information. And it's just fraudulent. And so you got to call them out on their crap. You got to make sure also that they have a surety bond. And that they are, a legitimate collection company. And that they are licensed. Okay? 99% of removals come from pinning the credit reporting agencies on inaccuracies, okay? Which is simply just the data. And that's why I like My Score IQ is because you have the data side by side. You could take a screenshot of your account and you can literally circle the inaccuracies. This is also called factual dispute.